Hello, Ray Phoenix here, and welcome to Let's Play Sonic the Hedgehog 2 Part 3. So now we're in the oil ocean zone. I'm sure this is where everyone gets their oil from. The oil ocean. Where else are we going to get it from? Where else are they going to use for cooking things, or getting oil into their cars? The kind of oil that Beavis and Butthead would put into the deep fryer at a restaurant, which would ultimately leave them unemployed from Burger World due to it not existing anymore because the place caught on fire. If only Sonic and Tails had fire, they'd just light this place easy. And then this whole place would go burning down, and then there would be, nothing left of the zones. That'd be one less zone in the game for us to play through. This is the last zone in the game that has only 2 acts, because the next zone is going to have 3 acts, and after that, each zone is just like a single act per zone. We're actually very far into the game. We're nearing the end. I remember watching an old video on YouTube a very long time ago, back in 2009, when YouTube was still in its very early days. Some guy, well, he was a guy when the video was made, but when he was a kid, he recorded himself playing Sonic 2 at his grandfather's house on his grandfather's Sega Genesis, and he was in this zone, and then he's like saying, this is the oil ocean zone, it's Egyptian. He thinks it's Egyptian for some reason. I don't know why you would think it's Egyptian. I don't see any Egyptian in this level at all. Maybe there is an oil ocean in Egypt somewhere, but then again, I know nothing about Egypt anyway. Since when was I an expert on Egypt? So I have no idea. I remember Sonic 2 was also the basis for a lot of commercials and things used in the 90s. I remember I was watching a commercial from 1994 for Sonic the Hedgehog SpaghettiOs, and it showed him playing Sonic 2. Well, it was actually playing Sonic and Knuckles, I think, but I had the music from Sonic 2 in it for some reason. And Sonic 2, it's like Sonic and Knuckles as Sonic 2 music. I think they're trying to make it seem like he's just playing a Sonic game, and then he has Sonic and Knuckles, and there's a game cartridge, and then he has like some sort of like game cartridge you can plug into Sonic and Knuckles. It makes like ravioli, I think, or some sort of like Sonic the Hedgehog spaghetti or something, like those canned spaghetti. So I don't remember what it was exactly, but it's like one of that canned stuff that's like that artificially processed canned stuff you see at the grocery store, which is of course artificially processed, just like anything else you would find at a grocery store. So I guess it's not out of place then. I don't know, it was an odd commercial seeing him play the game there, and this game actually does interact with Sonic and Knuckles on the later games in the Genesis. People consider it to be the first DLC. Before DLCs existed, back in 1994, there was Sonic and Knuckles. It was invented by a few elves at Santa's workshop, and Santa fired them because he didn't like their idea, so they sold it to Sega, and they became, really famous over this idea of Sonic and Knuckles. It was like you could put Sonic 2, your card, you could open the top of Sonic and Knuckles, you could put your game cartridge of Sonic 2 or Sonic 3 in there and play as Knuckles in those games. You could play as Knuckles in this game. Actually, the first time I ever 100% completed Sonic 2 was when I played through this game with Knuckles, because I wasn't being bothered by having Tails around, and Knuckles runs slower than Sonic, which ironically enough makes the game a little bit easier, because then you don't run into walls or crash into things as much. Because Knuckles is not as fast as Sonic. But then again, I had to rewrite my strategy for the final boss of the game because Knuckles can't jump as high, but I'll explain that later when we get to the final boss. I remember I would play that a lot, and people think I was weird, of course, for playing that, but I still enjoyed playing Sonic and Knuckles. It's one of the best things I ever bought on the Sega Genesis, and one of the first things I bought on the Genesis too, just shortly after I got the Sega Genesis. And I remember there'd be all kinds of weird issues, like it would crash a lot sometimes, sometimes Sonic and a lot of the time it would crash and I tried playing as Knuckles or restart the game, and the button mapping was odd, so pressing the C button would trigger the pause function, pressing a different button would trigger something else. The Genesis had like a weird kind of way it would wire to the system, so if you don't plug it in properly or kind of not plug it in well enough, it could actually make the different functions, the control functions, do different things. Kind of an odd thing. Then I also remember too that the first Genesis game I ever played with a 6-button Sega Genesis controller was Sonic 2, and I was testing out my 6-button Genesis controller. And then I realized how much of a crappy controller, so it's not a bad controller per se, but the standard 3-button Genesis controller is by far way superior. It fits in your hands a lot nicer. It's only 3 buttons, which is all you need for most Genesis games. More than 90% of all the games on the Sega Genesis, the regular Genesis that is, can simply be played with a 3-button controller. The 6-button controller is only really invented for playing games like Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat, or some of those fighting games. That's pretty much what I use. Heck, I don't even use it for that. Most of the time, I don't even really use that controller at all, because it even causes some games to downright malfunction or not even work. So most of the time that whenever I do play stuff like that stuff that requires 6 buttons, I usually use my arcade joystick. It actually feels like I'm playing Street Fighter 2 or Mortal Kombat in a genuine arcade. The closest you'll get to playing something in an arcade like that nowadays, on account of arcades are disappearing. There's fewer and fewer of them out in the world. So there's always going to be less and less of them around, so here's the boss time. Now this boss is similar to the boss in the Hilltop Zone, only it can't be exploited as easily, but I already destroyed more than half of its health right there. Just smashed the crap out of it. This boss tried to be a bit more high-tech by sending out an arm. I remember that kid in that same video I was talking about earlier, his grandpa was looking at this, and then he was like, ooh, how do you kill that thing? Well, I'm about to demonstrate how you kill this thing. He just destroyed easily, because I just hit him like a few times. He's already dead. The boss has been destroyed. And we free the animals as always, because the same thing. And animals were used to be turned into robots by Dr. Robotnik's plan. His plan this game, I think, is pretty much the same as it was in the first game. Just a rehash of the same story, but since when did stories ever matter in video games? And so now we're in the infamous Metropolis Zone. It's like the Starlight Zone mixed in the Scrap Brain Zone from Sonic 1, and it plays music that could easily be mistaken for the Chemical Plant Zone. It sounds a lot like the music from the Chemical Plant Zone. It almost seems like it could have been a remake, like an alternate version of it or something like that. I thought it was something like that when I first saw this. I first played this way back a long time ago. Thought it was something like that. Those crab things are almost impossible to kill. You have to hit them at a very specific point for them to be destroyed. But there's those weird star things and the starfish things. They're kind of like the things that were in the Starlight Zone in the first game. Those bomb things that you couldn't kill. You only could kill them as if you walk around them, then eventually they'll throw their stuff at you. And then there's those Orbinauts things, which actually were some Orbinauts in this game. I don't think I'd point them out, but yeah, there were Orbinauts. Oh, I almost fell into that bonus stage there. And speaking of bonus stages, Sonic 3 also has 3D bonus stages that resemble Bubsy 3D, and they're also in Sonic and Knuckles too. But sometimes when Sonic and Knuckles would malfunction, when I tried playing the game, it would instead of playing like the game you put in like Sonic 2 or Sonic 3, instead it would take you to some 3D game where you just walk around and collect balls, like which is the bonus stage in Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles. Well, they were just playing some game. It could also be a party game. It could also be something that could be a game itself. I'm surprised Sonic never had a spin-off like that was set in an isometric venue. Oh wait, there was! I forgot there was a spin-off game like that, Sonic Isometric Blast, which came out way later on the Genesis. It's pretty much just an old man that thinks he's still cool and thinks he could do well against the new competitors, but really, he just makes a big, major fool out of himself. Why am I not surprised? The Genesis didn't seem like it was making a big fool of itself in its later years, but what do you expect? A lot of systems do that. Heck, PlayStation systems don't even try to be like that now. They always try to just release only sports games in their later years, and that's just about it. I think the Genesis may have been like that too. For the later years of the Genesis, there was like, a lot of sports games. But as I said before, most of the games on the Genesis system were sports games, the kind of games that kids would still make fun of you for playing. So why would I care about that anyways? Why would I care about sports games? The Genesis had all kinds of bizarre oddity games on it too. Like I remember there was also a game called, Crazy Bus. It was a pirated game from Brazil, I think, or somewhere like that. All you do is just move a bus around non-stop, and there's like points thing. There's absolutely no objective to it at all, so you could barely call it a game. There are all kinds of weird pirated games on the Genesis. There's even this weird Mario game on the Genesis that looks like the Super Mario All-Stars version of the original Super Mario Brothers, but it plays completely differently, and it plays a really scratchy remix of the main Super Mario Brothers theme. It was another watch. And there was also So Mario as well too. It was like Mario and the original Sonic the Hedgehog, which was also it was like the original Sonic the Hedgehog for the NES, and apparently some people thought it actually was the real Sonic the Hedgehog, kind of like when Hardware Wars debuted in 1978, and a lot of people didn't know what Star Wars was yet, so a lot of people thought that actually was the real Star Wars. I thought a stupid parody was the real Star Wars. Yeah, and then playing Bubsy and finding out and thinking it's actually Sonic the Hedgehog. It's really a Bubsy game. I actually had that once. I remember one time in 2019, I had to draw a Bubsy Bobcat in art class. Well, I decided to draw a Bubsy Bobcat for some sort of life drawing project, and drew him like the Green Lantern with a sword. And then some kid looked at that and he said, "Oh, is that Sonic the Hedgehog?" And I said, "No, it's not. It's Bubsy Bobcat." And then some other kid, this also goes to show how very popular Sonic is these days. He said, oh, well, Sonic the Hedgehog, isn't he that guy, that Hedgehog thing from Wreck-It Ralph? He was created for Wreck-It Ralph, right? No, Sonic's been around long before Wreck-It Ralph. You mean they actually made games of Sonic way before Wreck-It Ralph? Whoa, mind blown. Yeah, they did make, Sonic did exist long before Wreck-It Ralph. So did Pac-Man, and what else? And Mario existed long before Illumination made a movie about him, and what else existed long before? What else exists long before? I don't know, there's a lot of things. I think sometimes people often joke about things always existing, or something have existed longer than we know, or longer than we realize. I mean, I can imagine making a movie about something like that. And that almost sounds like the trailer for X-Men Apocalypse. So they say, oh, 10 years ago, the world first discovered mutant kind, but the first mutant actually lived 1,000 years, or thousands of years ago in ancient Egypt. There were some X-Men games on the Genesis that were pretty decent. Like, there was X-Men 2, The Clone Wars, which I actually made a video of that a very long time ago. I still never beat that game. It's nowhere near as good as the X-Men arcade game. Nothing could beat the X-Men arcade game. That's by far the best X-Men game ever made. And then there's also X-Men Reign of Apocalypse, which I probably will do Let's Plays of those eventually at some point in the future, among my ever-growing list of games that I want to Let's Play. I'm really becoming a prolific Let's Player of all these Let's Plays that I'm doing, all these video game videos I made. I really am becoming what I wanted to be back in 2009 when I aspired to become a YouTube Let's Player, and I'd watch people like exploit things in games or play through games and stuff. And I guess I now have achieved that, and it was perfect timing too, because no one really cares about these kinds of things anymore. Just gonna let those starfish explode. The starfish are actually worse than those bomb things in the Starlight Zone in the first game, so they actually send them in like 5 directions, and it's really easy to get hit by them, and it's inevitable a lot of times, too, if you're gonna get hit or not. I wonder if anyone's ever played this game before without taking a single hit. I would like to personally go up to them and congratulate anyone that could ever do that, play this whole game without taking a hit. I wonder if anyone's ever played a Twisted Metal game before and beat the whole thing without taking a hit. I'd love to see that. This is also a game I used as a test one time to get Pico Drive running on the PSP, but I still never got the PSP, the Genesis emulator for PSP to work. I'm starting to think those may have been myths, or at least at the time this likely may have been myths. There's a lot of fake stuff to watch on YouTube. Like this video about this guy that takes a VCR apart, and he finds a few iPod Touches in there, and he finds an iPhone in there, as well as a GPS system, and a portable Blu-ray player. Oh, that's hiding your VCR. I guess I really regret selling my VCR. Oh wait, I don't regret selling it at all, because I never sold my VCR, so I still have it. I'm one of the only people in my town that still owns a VCR, and the only other person that owns VCRs in my town is Arcanine F50. So I guess we're on even, well actually no, he owns way more, so we're not on even ground then. And my grandma had her first VCR in 2004, back when everyone was still buying VCRs, right? Everyone loved watching movies on VHS back in 2004, just like everyone still likes watching DVDs to this very day. And she got her first some crappy Magnavox VCR from Walmart. It only lasted for 2 years and it broke down and died. A lot of people on Let's Players used to watch way back in the day would use VCRs to record these old gaming systems. Some of them like I know Classic Gamer was like this. They liked being genuine and play games on the actual systems and not use emulators. So the only way they could really do that is to record from an actual system is to record it using VCR, using a VCR to actually record onto actual VHS. So it would record it onto an actual VHS tape. I always wondered if I would record game footage, would it ever be like that? But I know my answer now. Just use emulators. Almost everything can be emulated these days. I don't really care much about genuine stuff. I mean, some people would call me, saying this isn't genuine or this isn't, I don't really, I'm not a true retro gamer. Say what they want. I don't care. Emulation's the only real way to play a lot of these games nowadays due to a lot of these systems becoming more and more rare. I'm glad my Genesis never died and I still have my Model 1 Genesis. That's the model that I have. That's my favorite model of choice. One of my favorite things about the Model 1 Genesis is that it has, well, this isn't really a favorite thing about it, but it has a headphone jack right in the front of it, making it the only system I know of that has a headphone jack on it. That's something a lot of TV manufacturers forgot to put on the TVs. They forgot to put headphone jacks on those things. How am I going to watch a TV and just so I can listen to exactly what everything says and it won't disturb anyone? And the TV is good, man. Yeah, a lot of TVs forgot to put those on, put headphone jacks on. So I guess Sega was kind of advanced with that, very forward-thinking. Sega was very forward-thinking back in the late 80s when they first made the Genesis. The Genesis had all, like, the best games ever. I know I've said that before, but it's true. The Genesis really did have a lot of the greatest games. They even had compilation games. Yeah, we talk about Sega Genesis compilations on newer systems. Newer being like PS2, Xbox, GameCube, PS3, and Xbox 360. And even today, apparently, there's still those. They're still a thing, despite the fact that emulators are everywhere. Those are still a thing today. Those compilation games or museum games, as my father once called them. There actually were collections like that on the Genesis. Like, I have an Atari collection on the Genesis. I've never been able to find a ROM of the specific cartridge anywhere. It had free games on it. It had Centipede, Missile Command, and Ultra Pong. And Ultra Pong had this variation where you can make the game play like hockey. It's called Pong Hockey. It actually was a pretty fun way to play Pong, actually. It actually was very unique and unique. It was almost impossible to play due to the fact that the only controller you have for the game is the Genesis controller, not a traditional paddle controller, which is what you should always use to play Pong with. Pong the Next Level in the PS1 had a very similar flaw, unless there's some sort of like paddle controller on the PS1 that I don't know about. I don't know, maybe there was some sort of paddle controller thing that got lost somehow that I never knew about. I don't know. There's all kinds of weird, bizarre hardware things I still don't know about. Like, it took me years before I found out the Genesis had a mouse. And why would you ever use a mouse on the Sega Genesis? I have no idea. Same with the PS1. The PS1 had a mouse, and it was more justified because it was advertised as being on one of the Atari collections on the PS1. And you could use a mouse to play Centipede, apparently, and Missile Command. Apparently, it's easy to play with a mouse. But I would never know because I never had a PS1 mouse, and something tells me that just those two games alone doesn't justify buying a mouse that I can only use on my PS1. Hey, maybe I could use a connector for it to connect it to my PC and use it as a PC mouse. But it doesn't have a scroll wheel, so what would be the point of that? You can't really live without a scroll wheel these days. So here's the boss. This is by far the easiest boss in the entire game. It gets easier and easier with each hit. He uses those bubble things around as a shield. There's a boss that's very similar to this in Sonic CD. Only the Sonic CD version of this boss is even easier because he's just a pathetic pushover that's completely covered in bubbles, which is something Sonic can eat. Yeah, why would you shield yourself with something that your antagonist, your foe, can eat? Why would you do that? Dr. Robotnik, is he really a doctor? Maybe he's a doctor of being an idiot or something. That's probably what his field of study is. He's a PhD from It University. That's probably where he earned his PhD or whatever it's called. It's probably where he earned it from, which would explain a lot. He is a big fool. No wonder why we destroy him so many times. Sonic is way smarter than him. Sonic should have a doctor's degree and do far more meaningful stuff. This is Ray Phoenix, signing out.